just so we get a quorum. So, okay. Thank you. So I'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So good morning, everybody. I would like to open up the Legal and Justice Systems Committee. It is 11:32 a.m. on February 11th, 2025. And I am excited to have Wendy Jones join us on the Legal and Justice Committee. Many of you know her from her 42 years of service at Whatcom County Jail. And I'm just really excited and thrilled to have her back to join us and give us her input on a lot of things that matter to legal and justice. So thank you for being here, Wendy, and participating.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is partnership opportunities with Whatcom Community College, and Dr. Michael McHenry, the program coordinator for the criminal justice at Whatcom Community College, is here to share. And so I'm going to let him take it away because I know that time is valuable to all of us that are on this committee. So thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Michael McHenry.
Hello, everybody. I've met some of you I haven't. I'll put my contact information in the chat. That way you guys can all take it down. Oh, there is no chat. Somebody has all my contact information. You guys are more than welcome to pass it around, and I'd be happy to meet with anybody one-on-one after this meeting. I know that you guys have a full agenda today, so I'll try and keep this quick. I'm Michael McHenry. I work at Whatcom Community College. I've been doing the program coordinator position under the criminal justice program for the past almost 3 years now. And for the past 3 years, I've been on this mission to redesign the program to be something other than a traditional criminal justice program. After spending a considerable career as in a variety of positions in the criminal justice system, especially law enforcement oriented, I have figured out that we need to do things differently because how we've been doing things the past 20, 50 years is not going to be working for the next 20, 50 years. And before students make it to police academies or law school, I've always felt that they need a much different education based in a different mindset rather than law enforcement as we traditionally know it. So I am on this mission to create a Bachelor of Applied Science here at Whatcom Community College. Focused on criminology instead of a criminal justice traditional program. When I first came in, I noticed that the majority of the material was focused entirely on kind of a law enforcement perspective rather than kind of a diverse, broad approach within the system that encompasses the other components, which is courts and corrections. But also we were missing something, which is community organizations and partnerships, including Opportunity Council, DVSAS, mental health organizations to try and address the root of the problem in communities, not just here in Whatcom County, but across the state and across the nation. So I've met with a considerable amount of partners up to this point here in the Whatcom area, both local, state, federal, and today I want to kind of discuss what it is that we're trying to do, especially around one key component of the program, which is an 800-hour externship. I noticed that in the notes for the agenda today, it was 400 hours when I initially reached out to kind of having some of these conversations. I've doubled it. Because it's my belief, not only as an educator, but also as a practitioner in the field. If we have other professionals in the criminal justice system, in the medical fields, even in trade schools that have to undergo hundreds and hundreds of hours, sometimes thousands of hours of practicum and internship experiences, why don't we have the same thing for criminal justice professionals going through their undergraduate program? And that's the one thing I've noticed across the U.S. Even when you look at the top 25 programs in criminology, both at the undergrad and the graduate level, this particular aspect is missing. And I think the more that students spend in undergrad for 4 years, especially at the community college level, better understanding root cause analysis as to why things are happening the way they are within the entire justice system, I think it would make them much more informed and strategic decision makers getting in the field on day one. I've recently passed around a survey to industry professionals across Whatcom Island and Skagit counties, and I think it's kind of spread throughout the state. Um, and over 50 responses from all four components, which is law enforcement, courts, corrections, and community partners, especially around behavioral health, have responded and said this is a program that we absolutely need to be pushing forward. Um, because and it's not the program per se, but it's the mindset. It's about teaching students at the undergrad level, exposing them to all four components in a very immersive way throughout their education. That way, when they actually make it to police academies, to law school, they not only understand to a much more greater depth as to what the traditional law enforcement perspective is, but also what are courts, corrections, and community partners doing to address a lot of the problems in our community, especially around reducing incarceration rates, um, filling jails full of people that are diagnosed with mental illness. And I was kind of 3 years ago, just a little bit of background on me. I moved here in 2019 to pursue a position uh, from Arkansas State Police to Department of Children, Youth, and Families, working crimes against children and being a child protective services worker here in Whatcom County. Um, and what I've learned is there are so many different resources that interventionists and case management professionals are not using on a regular basis, especially from a law enforcement perspective. So if we can get to the root of the problem in terms of education, um, and not just continuing to advance a law enforcement perspective, I think that students are going to graduate with a much better understanding in terms of how the entire network of the criminal justice system actually cooperates with each other, and really how it actually takes a village to solve some of these problems. Um, that's kind of my pitch. What I'm aiming to do is partner with as many organizations as possible, including your organization as a committee and individual organizations across Whatcom County and Skagit County, even to try and get students to commit to externships moving forward. Not only from policy-driven perspectives and working on committees, but really getting them to see firsthand what is being done behind the scenes that they traditionally aren't taught. And the reason it is 800 hours is because I want them to spend 200 hours respectively between the four components. And this is traditionally known as an optional internship opportunity for students. For this program, we are trying to push it as a requirement so that to graduate from this criminology bachelor's program here in Whatcom County, you will participate in 200 contact hours with law enforcement, 200 with courts, 200 with corrections, and 200 separate hours in organizations related to community partnerships. Um, I've got a growing list of partners that we're working with, including the response division. I met with Melora Christensen, I think last week, who is equally excited. I met with DV SAS, the director at DV SAS, just the other day, who is really excited, and some other growing partners in the community, including Maya Venio's office, who I'm currently in discussions with on trying to make externships work for each individual partner. Obviously, they're going to be flexible, so everybody's going to have an opportunity to kind of steer students in ways that you feel like they could best benefit not only your institution, but also what could really benefit them in terms of their educational pathway as well. That's it. I could talk about this for hours, and I would be more than welcome to meet with anybody in person privately to talk about how this could kind of really partner with you guys as well as us to kind of change the landscape as to graduates moving forward. Does anybody have any questions that I could try and answer now, briefly? If not, you're always more than welcome to just email me or call me. Um, I just don't have a way of uploading my information. Do you guys have a chat in here?
I can email around your contact information after the meeting, Dr.
Oh,
McHenry.
perfect. Yeah. My email, I try to respond to it very timely, especially with student needs. So that's kind of my pitch. I really appreciate you guys sitting down and listening to me today, and I look forward to kind of hearing from anybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael McHenry. I'm excited about your program. I think it's great to try to encourage students to look at all areas of criminal justice. And as this committee is the part of the incarceration reduction prevention, is one of the words in our task force. And I think having students understand the root and try to figure out how we can address some of those needs is great. I am sure that Heather is right on board with prevention, especially with her work with the children, and exciting to hear that you're working with Maya and the prosecutor's office. I'll reach out to you about Superior Court. You know, Jake couldn't be here today. He's the director of district court for Whatcom County, but I'll be happy to pass the information on to him because I think it would be beneficial for all of us. Is there anybody that has any questions for Dr. McHenry before we might move to the next agenda item? Okay.
Dr.
Thank you.
McHenry, have you had any contact with the Department of Corrections locally?
So part of our CJ advisory committee that helps me build this program, as well as the associates in criminal justice. I've got a gentleman, Mr. Reed, David Reed, with Community Corrections, who I'm trying to also build an externship with, so that students can kind of see how community corrections officers. I used to be a probation parole officer in the state of Arkansas, so I know how absolutely valuable that education was. Also, the work experience and learning about that. So I'm working with David Reed and his office and trying to establish the best possible externship with him too.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good. I'm the field administrator for our section with the Department of Corrections. So I cover Snohomish County North and out to Clallam and Jefferson County. So we have possibilities for internships in all those areas.
Oh, fantastic. Shoot me an email.
Sure, I will
yeah,
do that.
And I'll talk with anybody individually about how we can move this forward. This is exciting. So yeah.
Excellent. I see Stephen.
Yeah, this is off the top of my head, Raylene, but it occurs to me there's a possible value in maybe our joint committee meetings, sort of coordinating some of those hours from an intern. And I wonder if this might be a topic to put on our joint meeting agenda. Maybe to replay Dr. McHenry's presentation or invite him to that meeting as well, or simply to talk about the concepts of what he's outlining and how that might fit with the joint committee work.
I think that would be a great idea. And just as we're thinking and listening to his presentation, you know, I also see value of utilizing a student to help with some of the data points from different areas. Statistical information that sometimes we don't always have time to extract that could be beneficial for the task force as a whole. I look at some of the reports and I don't always have time to compile everything, and that might be something that we could use as well. So I think this is a great opportunity, and any way we can encourage students to go into the fields that we are desperately seeking. I know I have heard struggles with finding attorneys, not only in the prosecutor's office, but the public defender's office. And a judge recently told me that, he goes, do you realize that somebody that's been working for a little while at the SSC makes more than the entry-level prosecutor? And it's kind of eye-opening, because I knew that you would have electricians that would come in higher with 2 years of college, and trying to encourage students to enter a so needed field all the way across the board in criminal justice is really important. So any way we can support you, I think will be beneficial. And I agree with you, Stephen. Is there any other questions or comments?
Just let me add, Raylene, if I may. Dr. McHenry, I'm sorry that came out of the blue. I want to identify myself as a co-chair of the task force's Behavioral Health Committee. And there's so much overlap between the legal and justice systems and the behavioral health treatment system that we have quarterly joint meetings between our committees with Raylene's committee here. And so that's what I was proposing, is that we explore internship possibilities for that overlap work as well.
Yeah, I've got students that are interested in, like I was telling Wendy earlier, very non-traditional pathways throughout this program. This has been going on and growing actually every year since I've taken over. And they are not wanting to explore the traditional pathway of law enforcement mindsets and police officer positions. I have a few, but the majority of the students want to make a change, and they want to see change. And leading up to this point in my career, and as well as my own studies and education, this has not been the case. So to see this and to see it growing every year is actually quite exciting. So you do have a lot of interested students that are wanting to see a huge shift in how what they're seeing growing up and what they want to see for the next generation as well. So I could talk about this all day, trust me. But you have to cut me off. But yeah, please reach out to me. My email address will be passed around. I can set up a time anytime on campus. I can come to your offices. I can call you on the phone. We can set up private meetings. But I really want to create as many partnerships for students to explore different aspects of the entire justice system moving forward, long before they make a commitment to a particular career interest. All right. Thank you so much, team. I'm going to let you guys get back to your agenda. Just contact me anytime.
Thanks so much. Have a great day. Appreciate you being here. All right, so we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is to identify data questions that need to be answered. And that is something that Bertie sent us policy goals. And I don't know if you guys all have that or if we want to share that, but I'm going to let Bertie take this away, and then we can open it up for questions and thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think it might be helpful, Jill, if you'd, or Raylene, if you share the screen. I think this is a subject that comes up at every committee, and we're asking what are the data needs related to the Legal and Justice Committee. And in my experience, although people want a lot of data, when we ask that question, it's really difficult to answer. And so I was hoping to get a little framework around it. And it seems to me it's usually easier to answer the question about what data do we need if we decide what are the questions that we want answered by the data. So Raylene sent me what this committee, Legal and Justice, has requested of the Index Committee in 2020 and 2018. And so I went through and tried to distill the list of things and sort them a little bit. And that's what this is. And it's really meant as a tool to start our discussion. I put the policies at the top because Peter and Heather and a few others have drafted what they think the key policy goals are for the whole task force. And that obviously drives the items that we want data to demonstrate if we're achieving it or not. But underneath that, when you looked at what this committee did in the last couple of years, I thought in both 2018 and 2020, there were what I would call basic principles about the data that you all identified. And that's that we want to be able to track individuals across systems in some kind of way so that we know how they travel through the justice system and don't run into big gaps every time they move from one agency to another. We have to have accurate and consistent data definitions. We need well-trained people to enter the data so that we get good data. And there was agreement both years that we need baseline data to know if we're making a difference. And I think we would all agree on that. If anyone doesn't or has questions about it, please speak up now, because I would like to acknowledge that those things are super important and then move on. So does anyone have any questions or comments about that? Because I can't see you anymore now that we have this up. Stephen.
Yeah.
Bertie, I don't know if it's here or down below in the more specific measures, but one of the things we continually don't put on our list is one of our basic principles from years ago, which is to identify and understand and ideally reduce racial disparities at all points in the system.
Yes.
And I think that needs to be a most basic kind of guideline that we're shooting for with data improvement.
That's a very good idea. And so what I will do after this discussion is add all the things that we've discussed and then send it back to Raylene and Jill to distribute to everybody. It seems to me that's a way that we can capture the discussion and keep it moving forward.
And I would even expand that beyond racial disparities. If you talk to people with disabilities, physical disabilities, we'd want to know if they were being treated different in the aggregate, and all sorts of other ways that we could track how the systems are serving the individual needs of both staff and coming in.
Okay. Any other comments on what I mean, these are all arbitrary, obviously, but I was labeling kind of basic principles. And if there's no other comments, then I sometimes when I think of data, like to think of data in at different levels. One is what we call outcome measures, or in the language of our consultant from Village Reach, they're using a framework called results-based assessment at RBA, and so they call them performance measures. In other words, if we say we're going to do X, and then we do it, did it make any difference? And so I've always called them outcome measures, but the language doesn't matter. And the ones that I distilled out were obviously the recidivism rate. And these are from your notes. These are not new ideas coming in. The recidivism rate, and that's key, of course, because that's one of the things the whole project is trying to reduce. One is average length of time in jail, diversion rate by different programs, and then the number who successfully complete it, and I see some discussion, which is great. So Maya.
Hi, a couple thoughts.
Yes.
I think we need to be clear about what we're talking about when we say diversion, because is that pre-filing diversion? Is that use of a therapeutic court, which will ultimately result in dismissal, but the person is involved in the criminal legal system for years? Is
Okay.
that we need to consider the use of sentencing alternatives, like the mental health sentencing alternative,
Mhm.
drug offender sentencing alternative, family offender sentencing alternative, sex offender sentencing alternative, and how often those are being utilized. And are we concerned with just the length of jail time, or are we concerned with incarceration for our community members in general? Are we also considering the length of prison sentences? I don't know if that's abundantly clear. Thanks.
What do you think, or what does the group think? Because that's what we're trying to do, is prompt the discussion and answers.
I mean, I think that we should be concerned also with prison time, and I
Mhm.
think we should be looking at reentry opportunities and what is being offered and what's being taken advantage of and what's working and what isn't. So I think reentry is sort of an outcome too.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yes, Wendy.
There's a couple of things, and part of it is I am not sure how much has happened in the year and a half that I've been gone. One of the things I did when I left was I took a data set that I had been working with the county IT department as far as pulling reports. And I still got it on I think it went back 5 or 7 years. And so it tracked individual people, it tracked cases, and it was pretty basic, but as far as kind of seeing what the trend had been might be useful. Where I discovered it got difficult and would take a significant amount of time is to then try and cross-reference with the different parts of the system. One of the things Maya kind of touched on, and Bertie, you did too, and that was the pretrial versus sentence category. Our jail is like most other jails, at least in the state of Washington, and that is a lot of offenders spend most of what will ultimately be jail time or incarceration time pretrial.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you see happen, and I'm assuming after talking to Caleb, who's the chief now, that hasn't changed. And so we get a significant number of people that will be in jail for a long period of time, go to court and be sentenced, and then they leave the same day because they've already done their jail time. And the reason for us on the correction side is that once people are sentenced, we can look at a lot more different options for them. We can move them into jail diversion that's within the sheriff's office. We can work with the other agencies in town as far as trying to get them, this might work and this might work and that might work. So that keeping somebody pretrial really significantly limits what at least the corrections part can do to change things or find different options for them. But one of the things I'm not seeing, and we haven't, as long as I've known these committees have been in place, there's never been a representative from IT. And it's going to be critical.
Absolutely.
And so that's important. And I think one of the things, going back to Mike was talking about, is that might be a place for an externship at the community college with this new college process, because to teach people what to look at, one of the things that we saw change somewhat was racial identity. And that was when the conventions changed, and one of the things we did at the jail side was that we would ask people, what do you consider?
Right.
And which is, I think, the best way of doing it. But if you are looking at what most other law enforcement parts of this work, they work on what they see. So if you have someone who's biracial, they'll make an assessment based on the color of the skin, or male, female, and the other iterations of that. So that some of those data points have changed because of conventions, especially in Washington, because we tend to be pretty progressive. So those were kind of off the top of my head. I think the most critical thing is going to be getting IT involved, and whether that individual or those individuals sit within IT or sit at the county exec's office, or I don't know, maybe the sheriff's office. It would have to be somebody with a high level of how to access the information that's in from all of the different systems that we work with, or at least come up with something close enough that would get us a true measure of what we're seeing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I can just fill you in a little bit, Wendy, that I'm the chair of the Index Committee, which is a subcommittee like Legal and Justice, and it is loaded with IT, which is excellent.
Good.
Perry Rice, who's the head of IT for the county. And the county has engaged a consultant team called Village Reach, which is looking and going to make recommendations about our data. And part of what they're looking for and what this discussion is coming from, what data do we want? What are the questions we want answered? And then they are going to help advise what Whatcom County would need to do in order to get from where we're at to where we want to be from an IT point of view.
Do you know if Village Reach has individuals working for them that are comfortable and very aware of nuances within these systems?
Well, Village Reach has 2 full-time employees working on this for 6 months. And so their grant is somewhat limited. They have a data analyst that I have been talking with, and they're quite familiar with systems and have done this for quite a long time. So
and that's fine, and I won't belabor the point. One of the issues that I know my office had issues with the Vera report was that it completely disregarded the lamination, and that they would take anybody who was in custody in the jail, because the jail here holds for the lamination because they don't have a pre-trial detention facility. And so that took out, it really, really skews the data for Native Americans.
Right.
And so that was one of those things. And that I'm just double checking and
well, your points are well taken, and I can see that we may want to mine your expertise in the future for all of those details, because it's clear, I mean, this is an enormous amount of work on once we decide what measures we want, there's an enormous work about how you actually define them and get them.
So. I would certainly be more than welcome, and I can probably turn over the data set that I've got to Village Reach if that would be useful for them. So
it might be. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think that what Raylene and I are hoping to get out of this discussion is what's already happening, more ideas about what are the things that from the court system are really important for us to be looking at. And there's 2 aspects to it. One is, what would we want to put on a public-facing dashboard? And a separate but obviously related issue is, what will help you in your roles within the court system measure how successful you are? In other words, if jail time, pretrial or otherwise, is something we're trying to change, then obviously measuring that is really important. And so I'm just opening it up to everybody for reflection on the things you wish you knew that would help you play your roles better.
Stephen?
Besides understanding the outcomes, Bertie, I would be interested in understanding enough to see how we reach those outcomes.
Absolutely.
And I'll use your example of jail time.
Mm-hmm.
We went to years of work to adopt a risk assessment tool for pretrial releases,
Mm-hmm.
which was intended to minimize the negative effects of bail, keeping low-income people in jail. It turns
Mm-hmm.
out that ever since then, most of the judicial officers impose bail anyway. And so I don't know how we get around that. I don't know how we even look at that and have a discussion, because that's not an open discussion. But I do think that it would be helpful to understand in terms of how long people are in jail, how much of a role bail might be playing in that. So that, and so here you have, when you're looking at a dashboard, are you looking at it as the stakeholders who have some vested interest in it? Or are you looking at it from the perspective of the public who wants to see some reforms and some progress outcome measures? And I think you might come out with different.
I think so.
And that perspective.
And your point is extremely well taken, because if you pick something like jail time, the next step is to dig down and get all the detail on what is it that's causing people to be in jail, and et cetera. Maya.
Thanks. This is kind of a question for Eric Ritchie, if you're tuned in. I'm not sure if he's listening or available to. Hi, Eric. Yesterday at First Appearances, Dave Graham mentioned that your office is no longer going to summons for failure to register cases, that they're going to go straight to arrest warrants. And we've been doing, or I've seen your office be doing summonses on those cases for a long time. That just seems like that seems like a policy shift in one particular, maybe seemingly small way, but that will result in more initial arrest and incarceration pre-trial than by issuing summonses. And I don't know if that is in fact something that has been consciously decided, or if that was just an offhand remark, but I feel like there's these little, like that seems important to me, that seems like a policy shift. And I don't know if I'm sorry to put you on the spot. It just literally came into my inbox during this meeting, and I was like,
yeah,
it's so relevant to what we're talking about.
So if you'd like a response, I don't really have one. I'm not really familiar with that decision, who made that decision, and what went into it. So if you'd like, I can get back to you.
I think that's an example, a perfect example of if we being the Legal and Justice Committee, decide on a few key issues that we really want to get better understanding of, for example, jail time, then the next step would be to look at all the factors that impact jail time and get some data extracted on it and have discussions around it and go from there. So I think those are the kinds of things that may be very possible in the somewhat shorter term than the long-term needs to get much improved data systems throughout our entire criminal justice system. So I'm very interested in helping to facilitate those kinds of things if there's interest on focusing into something like that.
Thank you, Bertie. I know I don't mean to, poor Eric, I'm putting him back on the spot, and he's gonna pop back up and shake his head. I provided your list to some of my criminal clerks
Mhm.
earlier and asked them, I said, what do you think about this list? What do you think we could change? And one of the things that they asked me about, and there may be legal reasons we can't, but they said the warrant identification hearings is something that we have. And they say, okay, you're here at this court date, and then they have to come back on the following Friday. She's like, what if they did the warrant identification hearings and they set the trial date right then, so they don't have to come back? Because we're
Mhm.
seeing that they don't come back on that next Friday, and then we have another warrant. That was just something that was brought up to me. And if that's
Mhm.
something that's going to keep somebody out of jail, or is that something we can measure? How many warrants are actually being issued again after we've had that hearing when that individual is here? And so
Mhm.
I was asking Eric's thoughts on that.
I'm gonna jump in and let Eric respond too, but Commissioner Keeler was discussing this at the end of last year. I responded to her in early January that our office is very supportive of a move to enter trial setting orders at first appearance. I think it would unclog to some extent a little bit the Friday arraignment calendars, and that they could very efficiently be handled at first appearance. I didn't, I haven't really heard anything since that. I think she responded, I sent that email on January 7th, and I want to say that she responded saying, sorry, I'm looking for her response. I don't know where it went. It was like, thanks for telling me, and we'll see. And then I haven't heard anything since then. So yeah, I would be interested to see that movement as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, most of our calendars are separated that way by our courts, and I think that's something that we could certainly look at. I'd be happy to enter court dates when it's convenient for people. I don't know why
Mhm.
we would have a problem with that. So anyway, Raylene, if you'd like to get a group together to talk about that, I'd be happy to attend.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think I can talk to the commissioners and the judge presiding and see if we can arrange something that might make more sense to try to prevent warrants being issued again. As we're talking about warrants, I know I did some research before I came on board, gave it to Caleb for past history on warrants, and didn't get all of the information we needed recently from some of the courts, but we had a pretty good idea of warrants. Probably wouldn't hurt to reach out to Jake to see how the warrant quash days went that they had recently, how many actually were beneficial, unless, I don't know if Eric has input on that, but that's something we could look at for measures. Other overall policy goals, I'm glad Maya touched on some of the other diversion programs, because I was like, we need to at least look at adding the therapeutic courts. There's mental health court, there's drug court, there's recovery court. And what is the recidivism rates on those courts? Do we want to look at adding more courts that are
Right.
therapeutic? I know some of the other counties have veterans court, and their programs with the veterans have been very successful, with I think a 98% recidivism decrease on the veterans court that was in Spokane. So unfortunately, trying to get those courts require a lot of oversight and management, and it's not a simple process to just do overnight. But those are some thoughts that I've had as we were looking at some of these reports. I know when I spoke with Judge Jones a while back about data from the Superior Courts, he discussed that we wanted to look at criminal aging reports and I think, what's the other one I have here? Sorry, I grabbed two reports that I pulled earlier, just to kind of have an idea of how long somebody's been in custody and their sentencing and their confinement details. And it was interesting to me because it has the one report that I pulled this morning, it has the name of the defendant, It has their case types, charges, whether they were found guilty. And I just pulled a really small snippet, but it says, you know, whether they were in prison or they served their time in jail. And I only did the 1 month. And surprisingly, being from Superior Court, it was about 50-50 for a 1 month span of how many people actually had already served their time in custody from pretrial to conviction. And then the aging report would show 60 to 90 days past due, 0 to 30 days, and how long it took from the time that the case was filed to whether it's still not completed or if the case is completed. So I think those aging reports will help us analyze different aspects. And I don't know if I'm able to show if there's been different attorneys. It looks like there was one of a withdrawal of attorney after the case was dismissed, but whether the prosecutor has been changed throughout the course of the time, whether the public defense attorney or any attorneys that have been appointed to the CAME have withdrawn and substituted, because that really does impact the length of the case as somebody's new coming onto it and starting over. And I think Maya and Eric might be able to speak a little more towards that. But those are just some measures that I was thinking of that we might not have added, but should be looked at.
Yeah, I'm taking notes here. I think these are really excellent ideas of the types of measures that might help.
I know I did send this information to Jake. He is at the clerk's luncheon for the municipal and district courts this afternoon, which is why he isn't here, and that's why Tammy
Right.
Bennett left earlier. They have that once every 2 months, and it just happens to
Happened to-
be at the same
sure.
date and same time as this meeting. But I did ask him, I said, you know, this is probably a good thing to share at the clerk's luncheon to get input and to bring that back to this committee as a whole to see what other things that they would think of that were not. And I see Wendy.
Just one more data point that you'd want to look for, especially on the felony side, is to find out how long, if the defendant was sent to Western State, and how long they stayed there, and especially if they were multiple admissions, because I think if you looked at the list, because every once in a while I look at the roster, and we've got people sometimes in for years. So that
Right.
skews part of that data, but part of it is just we have a lot of mentally ill offenders in jail, but y'all know that. So. But the jail can pull up that data for you if you needed to. Wendy Tarkin would probably be a good resource for that.
Who is that?
Wendy Tarkin, she's our records manager over there.
Okay.
She's very good at tracking that kind of stuff down. So.
Okay.
Raylene, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so good at that. I'm sorry. Is there anybody else that has any other thoughts or ideas that we could provide to Bertie to assist on the goals to get the proper measures that are needed?
What I would suggest is if,
Sorry, I do have one attendee who's simply named Whatcom County Sheriff's Office. Would you like me to allow speaking privilege? Okay.
Yes, please.
yes,
All right, go ahead and speak. Whatcom County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, and hello is Sheriff Tanksley.
hi,
Hey,
Jen.
hey, I do want to second what Wendy was saying is that we do have that information in terms of our detainees, how long they've been here, how long they've been at Western State, and of course, you know, some people are back and forth. In fact,
Sure.
I just looked at some of that information last week. So it's very useful information and something that we can provide.
That's excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tank. Eric Peterson.
Yeah, I know that Maya had brought up the prison sentence length. Is that
Mhm.
information that you guys would have through the county? Or,
So
I-
Eric, I can provide you a copy of one of the reports that I just ran that has the prison sentence along with the defendant and the information on it, and see if that's something that would be beneficial for you. And then if you needed different information, I can work on that for you. You just have to let me know if this is what you need or if you need something else.
oh, I wasn't asking it to get it. I was wondering if you guys couldn't get it, I was thinking that maybe I could try to grab that information from our system,
Got it.
through our research and analytics, if that was something you'd be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be helpful to get yours versus what I have because it might be different, and sometimes we have different data points that would be beneficial to see the discrepancies in them.
Is that something you guys are interested in? If so, I'll pursue it.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
And if my experience is you have discussions like this, and then later you start thinking more about other items that would be important. And so I would really encourage you to either let Raylene know or to email me through Jill. I don't mind people having my email address. That's not a problem. It's just that I know Jill wants to keep communications appropriately part of the committee record. So, but you're welcome to, and I'm going to collate our discussion today as best I can. And then maybe we can identify some areas that take more discussion to really tease out what the details are, the types of data, and this is really helpful. Yes, Eric.
Is there a specific time frame you'd be interested in?
What do you rest of you think? You mean for the data that you're going to get?
2024 or?
I
Any
think
ideas?
it would be nice to see the difference between 2023 to current.
Okay, so what I can do.
Stephen?
Yeah, Raylene and Bertie, I'm sorry, my Zoom went kerplooey and I had to reboot to rejoin the meeting. So if this is jarring or covers ground you've already covered, stop me. But in terms of specificity, you have one of the outcome measures you want to track is recidivism. And to me, it matters on a number of different levels to understand whether that's recidivism after a diversion or a treatment program.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
and ideally, the specific treatment program and diversion,
Mm-hmm.
because in terms of accountability or future contracting,
Mm-hmm.
we want to know the effectiveness of that outcome.
Right.
And we ought to treat that lightly because people with substance use disorder may need a couple of rounds of
Right.
recidiving, but we ought to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you make an additional good point, which is measuring something and then the judgment that follows that, like, is that good or bad or expected or not, are two very different things. And we have to be very aware of that. But we do need to measure it. You're right.
Eric?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, Stephen got me thinking about this, and this might help policy decisions be made. Do you want to collect recidivism while a person is on pretrial release?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right, because otherwise you wouldn't have a good measure of how accurate your pretrial release decisions are, right?
And that's something I think that Stephanie Kraft would be able to provide some more information as the pretrial release program has grown a little bit over the last year, adding a new party to that program, and see how things have changed post-COVID with additional people be monitored on pretrial release.
Okay.
Bertie, we're getting short on
Oh,
time.
yes, we are very much down to the wire. Well, I appreciate this discussion, and I will make an attempt to summarize these thoughts and send them back. And please keep this, to the degree that you have time and think about it, an ongoing discussion as you come up with more items that you wish you had. And then we can, on the index committee, really look at what do we already have, what would take extra work to get, and hopefully start getting some things for you.
Thank you, Bertie.
Good, thank you.
The last agenda item is for the joint meeting with Behavioral Health Committee, which is coming up soon. So I know that Stephen brought up bringing in Dr. Michael McHenry because we see a lot of overlap. I think that's a great topic. Is there any other topics that people want to bring forward to the next joint meeting? Stephen.
Raylene, Dan and I are working toward an actual action plan for 2025 for the Behavioral Health Committee, which will involve some work groups focusing on certain subjects that are priorities. Some of those, it seems to me, are likely to have some connection with legal and justice. And so how to integrate the planning that each of our committees might be doing with each other. I can't be more specific than that very vague summary statement, but I'd ask you to give some thought whether that's a topic that the joint committee meeting might want to take a look at.
I think that would be beneficial to look at. At least, and if you have more information that we could circulate prior to the meeting, that would be helpful, so we could have better discussion and input. Maya?
A group of us are going to see this King County Link program on Monday, February 24th. That includes Eric and myself. I think Barry Buchanan, Heather is going to be there, I think. Melora. It conflicts with the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force meeting, the 2-hour meeting that morning, so we won't be able to attend that. And I don't know when the combined meeting is, but maybe someone could report back. And maybe Heather is that person. Hi.
Maya, what day are you? What event?
Sorry, so February 24th, Monday, is like a field trip to King County to meet their Link program providers and kind of check out
Nice.
the program. So Link is the diversion program for folks who are competency involved. And it would, I assume, kind of tie into that True Blood funding we got to make housing and all that business.
Love to hear a report back on that. After you guys are done, that would be great. And I think, is there anybody else that has comments or would like to add to the next joint meeting? All right. I'm going to move to other business so we can adjourn fairly shortly. The only thing that I've got right now myself is that I expect by next week, Tuesday, we should have an advocate for the Domestic Violence Commission working out of the courthouse to assist people with protection orders so that our office can divert those individuals that are intimate partners that need assistance and be forwarded to different advocacy programs that can assist them. So that's really exciting. I'm working with Nikki D'Onofrio on getting that established, and that is a Justice for Families grant that was awarded late last year. So it's kind of exciting. Anybody else have other business that they would like to share? All right, it's quiet. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will adjourn. It's
Oh,
12:31.
excuse me, Raylene, we do need to do public
Oh,
comment.
sorry, my bad. Public comment, go for it.
We have two attendees. If either of you would like to speak to the committee, please virtually raise your hand now. And no hands are raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right.
Now we're adjourned.